Hi, okay, so today I'll be talking about the circulatory and respiratory systems, and I'll be focusing on heart arrhythmias. And I've done a lot of research on this topic, so I'm excited to share with you about this. Okay, so first I'm going to start with the story of gas exchange in the respiratory system. So first, air enters through the nostril and mouth, and it kind of gets filtered out by these nasal hairs. And then after passing through the epiglottis, which is in the back of your throat, it goes down the trachea, which is the windpipe. And the epiglottis is kind of a little flap of tissue in the back of your throat that'll close and it'll prevent food from going down your trachea. But the air can pass through it. So over here, this is the trachea. It's kind of been pushed aside in my dissection. And so then the air will flow down the trachea into two bronchi, one on each lung, and then that'll filter into many bronchioles. So here we have the left lung, right lung, and the heart is over here. Um, this is just some orientation. So here's a close-up at the lungs. This is the anterior side of the lungs and the posterior side of the lungs of my pig dissection, left lung, right lung. And you can see all these little blood vessels running through it. And this is where around here where the two bronchi come down. They're not here. They've been cut out. And then the bronchioles kind of filter down, bringing the air to fill up these lungs. So now to talk a little bit more about what's inside the lungs. Here we have a cross section, so you can see all the air the air going through over here. And so uh, it comes down from the trachea into the two bronchi, and then here are the bronchioles I was talking about before. And then inside the lungs, they're filled with they're made up of these little sacs called alveoli. Right here, they kind of look like little trees, and there's millions in each lung. And so the O2 will diffuse into the epithelial cells across the epithelium and flows to the heart and the bloodstream. Right here, this is the oxygen flowing from the alveoli through these little capillaries and exchanging the gas. And then the CO2 will diffuse back the opposite way into the deoxygenated blood, which goes from the heart, and then it's going to be exhaled by the lungs. So the O2 will basically flow to the heart and to the bloodstream, and the CO2 will flow back from the heart to be exhaled by the lungs. And so this is a physiological process that mirrors this idea of form follows function. So the alveoli are like these little sacs, tiny sacs that make up your lungs. So lungs aren't like one big sac. They're made up of they're like the form are these little sacs, and then they expand and contract when you breathe in and out. And that kind of that form explains the function of bringing in the air and then taking that oxygen and sending it to all your muscles and then putting out the CO2. So that's the function. Okay, so next I'm going to talk a little bit about heart anatomy and the start of the circulatory system. So this is kind of a cross section opening of the heart. So we cut it down the middle. Um, and so the heart has four chambers. There's the left ventricle, which is this big one over here, right ventricle, and then this is also the right ventricle. It kind of mirrors over left ventricle, and then left atrium is right here and here, and then the right atrium should actually be right up here and right up here. It's been cut off in my dissection, so this is a sheep heart. It was there, it just didn't really come across. Um, I kind of cut around it, but I'll be able to show you in some other pictures where it would be on the outside. But I wanted to use my dissection um, when showing this, so that's why it's kind of in red because you can't see it perfectly. But the right atrium would be over here. Okay, perfect. So this is another view of the heart. We're looking down on it, and this is the pulmonary artery and the aorta right here. I'll get I'll talk a little bit more about those um, real soon. Okay, this is a GIF of so this is the anterior side. Now we're going to the posterior side. I'm kind of twisting it. You can see Mateo in the background, and I cut down the middle. This is the septum right here. Um, so this kind of gives a nice 360 of the heart. Okay, so this is my own drawing of the circulatory circuit. I'm going to kind of go through it. So the we can kind of just start here. This is a blood cell, and it's deoxygenated right now. So it's a red blood cell. It's got hemoglobin, which kind of attracts the oxygen and it kind of keeps in this little bubble of the red blood cell. And so it's deoxygenated right now. It starts in the right atrium, which is smaller. It gets filled up, it contracts, and then pumps it through the valve. I'll talk a bit more about valves later. Goes to the right ventricle, which is the bigger one, more muscular than the atrium, because that's really doing the pumping out. And then it kind of comes out through the pulmonary artery, still deoxygenated. And then it goes into these little capillaries, and through passive transport, it goes to the lungs, and O2 through passive transport will come into the bloodstream. CO2 will go out through those, like I described before, the alveoli. And then now this blood, all these blood cells are oxygenated because they picked up oxygen from the lungs. They flow back through the pulmonary vein into the left atrium. So now we're here. And then through the valve, the oxygenated blood in red goes to the left ventricle, that really big muscle, which pumps it out through the aorta. The aorta is a huge artery. It's got oxygenated blood, and it's basically going to everywhere in the body. So kind of comes up and then it goes back down. Oh, it was back here. This is the aorta. So this is huge thing. It goes. It's got all the oxygenated blood, comes down, little capillaries, breaks off, and then it'll distribute, and through, again, passive transport, O2 will go into the body, feed the muscles, and into the small intestine, and then nutrients will also come from the blood into the body and then out of the small intestine. So now now the blood is deoxygenated. It comes back through the vena cava, and then that'll kind of loop behind the heart and come up carrying deoxygenated blood. It's blue. And then that'll kind of pump back into the right atrium. And then the whole cycle starts over again. So it's a circuit, it's a double circuit. Up here we got veins, down here we have arteries. The left is the pulmonary circuit because it's the lungs, and systemic circuit because it goes to the body. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about arteries and veins. So it's pretty simple. Arteries carry blood from the heart to the lungs. They're usually oxygenated except for the pulmonary artery. That's the only exception. And then veins carry blood from the lungs to the heart. So they're usually deoxygenated, again, except for the pulmonary vein, but that's the only exception. And then there's other arteries throughout the body, renal arteries, for example, that carry blood to the kidneys so that they can like process urine. And they branch off from the aorta, and it's the only blood supply to the kidneys. So there's the left and right renal artery, and they kind of go down and supply blood to the kidneys. So here's some more examples of arteries. Here are coronary arteries, which are around the heart. They bring blood to the heart so it can work. And then the renal arteries, this is the kidney back here. It's kind of hidden back here. And then these are kind of some more. This is the abdominal aorta, so the heart would have been up here. This is everything's been kind of scooped out, and then the inferior vena cava is in blue down here, carrying deoxygenated blood back to the heart. And so these are kind of just some more examples of arteries and veins in the pigs. Now I'm going to talk about valves and nodes. So the pulmonary valve, valves kind of they're in the heart and they connect the two chambers and they kind of regulate the pumping. So the pulmonary valve is from the right ventricle to the pulmonary artery, so it over here. And then the aortic valve is from the left ventricle to the aorta. So this is the aorta, comes through here. So the blood will kind of come like pump through the left atrium, comes down here, and then through this valve right here. And then yes, there are also nodes. So the SA node, the sinoatrial node, this kind of deals with like the electrical signals of telling the heart to pump blood. So this is the SA node, deals with the atria, and then the AV node, which is the one for the ventricles. These kind of there's spots on the heart that determine and send electric current to tell the heart how fast to pump blood, when to pump blood. And then now I'm going to get into a bit about heart arrhythmia, which is when those nodes are kind of messed up. So our heart arrhythmia is just an irregular heartbeat. So electrical signals normally tell the heart how to pump blood, but heart arrhythmia happens when electrical signals tell the heart to beat improperly. So atrial fibrillation, the heart can beat up to 400 beats per minute, and this is an irregular heartbeat. So right here you have a normal heart rhythm, And down here you have atrial fibrillation heart rhythm. So you can see they're not perfectly spaced. They're like really high. That's not good. That means there's something wrong with the atria, the AV node, and so it's sending like bad signals to the heart, and so it might go like, and it's like a flutter. It's not good. And then there's also ventricular fibrillation, which is from the the sorry, from the AV node, and that kind of messes with the ventricles. And so some of the symptoms of heart arrhythmia are fatigue, cardiac arrest, and then you can die really easily from it, because the heart needs to be pumping blood like at all times. It's really important. And then some causes are age, high blood pressure, diabetes can all lead to it. It's also genetic. So if one of your relatives or parents had heart arrhythmia, you're at a higher risk. Smoking, so don't smoke, because that can also increase your risk of heart arrhythmia. And so yeah, so these are just kind of random impulses that lead the chambers of the heart to pump randomly and incorrectly. And it's a medical emergency. When you have it, you have to have surgery. Okay, so now I'm going to talk a little bit about treatment. I was fortunate to work this last summer. I worked at the Brigham Hospital for a couple months over the summer in a electrophysiology lab, where I worked and learned all about heart arrhythmia, and I actually performed like tests with a catheter and creating ablations uh, and measuring the size of those ablations to basically be used in the operating room surgery. So here's an example of a bunch of ablations I made with a catheter, and I'm cutting them open with a scalpel to measure them with a ruler. And so here I am in the lab. On the right, this is me. I'm back here. And we kind of have this catheter hooked up. It's in water. There's like specific resistances of the patch. So all this like electrical stuff. And then you can see the piece of heart tissue down here. The catheter is kind of going in, and then you have to set it upright so it's perpendicular. And then you hit a button, it goes beep. And what it does is it's called radio frequency, RF ablations. And so that kind it kind of sends in it like these radio waves, and it heats up a, this portion of the heart, and it kind of scars it and burns it. So you use this, you kind of create a chain on the heart tissue, and that stops bad signals from being sent if you have an arrhythmia, and like you kind of scar the tissue around it, and then that'll prevent like if there's like a bad signal like beep beep that's like interfering, you can scar the tissue around it, like in an operation, and that'll hopefully fix the heart arrhythmia. So I was doing work this summer with a bunch of different variables on like how much energy to send into the catheter, how much resistance, how much salt's in the water, to see how those variables would affect the size of the ablation, because you don't want to burn too big of ablation on the heart, because then you're going to kill the heart. So you have to make them small enough that they stop the bad electrical signals that are being sent, but you don't want to damage other parts of the heart. So here I have an example of two ablations that I made, and this is like a little gel to see if like it hits it. Um, so yeah, this is some more work. I did some irrigant control. This is a control you can see. We did we because you have to irrigate the catheter so that it doesn't overheat. So there's like water being sprayed through the catheter. And this is like a special we tested like the pH also of the irrigant. And so this is just a control sample. You can see there's no ablations in the heart tissue. And finally, I was cited as an author of this research letter that we submitted to circulation, arrhythmia, and electrophysiology. Over here, you can see me. This was one of the couple research letters. This one particularly was about like lesion depth, using like high power shot of RF applications. And so like basically it's as I explained before, measuring how deep the lesion is going to be based on how much energy you put in. So I attached my research letter here. Um, yeah, so this is kind of what inspired me to learn more about this and do a presentation about this, my research this summer, because I had a lot of fun, and it's something that I'd like to explore a lot in the future. So this is it. This is my works cited, um, and here are my reference photos. But thank you so much for listening to my talk on the circulatory and respiratory systems.